Back with us, the Chief of Police in Battle Creek, Jim Blocker, and Calhoun County Sheriff Matt Saxton. Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning, Richard.
Welcome back. This is National Police Memorial Week. Sorry to say, the list from the last year of officers we've lost in the line of duty is somewhat lengthy.
Well, you're exactly right, Richard. It's very unfortunate to say. This year, 143 names will be added to the Law Enforcement Memorial in Washington, D.C.
143?
That died in the line of duty this past year alone. There's an additional 240 names that will be added this year that died and are verified as line of duty deaths that occurred from the first known death, which was back in the 1700s.
Wow. That's incredible. How do officers, if you'll use the phrase, active duty officers, look upon this week?
You know, I think it's a bittersweet week for everybody in the profession. I think it's a week to be introspective. It's a week to really think deeply upon why do you do what you do. You know, why every single day you push and pull in dealing with the community. You know, I think being a police officer or in law enforcement in general, it is one of the most complicated professions out there, and I think one of the most difficult because we deal with the most complicated group of problems and people. You just can't determine the conditions and the variables, how they're going to react. And the fact that we put young people as well as old in these scenarios to deal with folks in their most traumatic scenario or situation, you just don't know what the outcome is. And this week is that time to acknowledge that this is where the ultimate sacrifice happened. They're not just numbers, they're names with families. And this is the week where I think as a nation and importantly as a community, we get to pause and say thank you.
Does this play at all on the minds of officers who do face those challenges in a way that makes their jobs more difficult?
I think for each officer it's dealt with differently.
Okay.
But to finally have a week and recognize the things that law enforcement does, we've seen over the last 24 months the negative outlash towards law enforcement through social media, and that's a small minority of our community. The vast majority of our community supports law enforcement, and we see it every day. So this week to go out and thank a law enforcement officer is special, but we need to thank them every day for the job that the men and women here in Calhoun County, here in the city of Battle Creek, do to serve us, the citizens of Calhoun County.
This is National Police Memorial Week. We're here with Chief Jim Blocker and Sheriff Matt Saxton. Short break, and we're back in a moment on 95.3 WBCK. Here we are on a Monday with Chief Jim Blocker and Sheriff Matt Saxton. It's National Police Memorial Week. Just this morning, the Attorney General of Michigan sent a release around acknowledging the officers in Michigan whom we've lost in the last year. And so observances are part of this week, aren't they?
They are. And matter of fact, even tomorrow, there's a funeral for one Norton Shores officer who was killed tragically in an accident just last week. So again, it's just one more poignant reminder that this is a dangerous profession, and we all have to be careful. And, you know, these are our sons and daughters doing exactly what we've asked them to do, and that's to keep the peace in our community. You know, these call loads and the tragedy, you go into the emergency room, you look at the activity and the police reports, all of those are a glimpse into the soul of our communities. And I think, and then the first responders that are always there. Whenever we call them, they never ask where, they never ask who, they just anytime, anywhere, they're there. And I think the fact that we've acknowledged it as a nation, that this week we're just going to pause and say thank you, we're all really grateful for it.
So are there community events at which we can do that?
Well, there are. So tomorrow, May 16th at noon at City Hall in the Chambers, we do our annual Police Award ceremony. It's the first part is a memorial. acknowledging those who have passed, retirees who have passed on, and the sacrifices folks have made. And then we kind of change gears, and then we move right on into a celebration to honor the extraordinary, events or officers that have done the extraordinary. But we also take the moment to acknowledge fellow officers from Calhoun County, state police, other agencies that we work with daily, citizens, and of course that one group of people that we don't talk about as much, but they're always there, and that's our dispatchers. They're the ones, they are that pivotal key member that's that first call you make. They're the ones there, and they're the ones that help us get to where we need to be.
Boy, they're the ones that stay calm and cool and know exactly how to make the right connections when someone's on the end of the line in a difficult situation. Well,
and their job is, I think, one of the most important in the public safety realm. If not for them to get all the information of a incident that's going on, and that could mean a life and death incident.
Right.
And those dispatchers, call takers, pass that information on to law enforcement, fire, EMS, and oftentimes don't know the outcome of the incident they were didn't initiate, but initiated the pass on of information.
Yeah. They have to just move on to the next
high stress job.
Yeah.
And many community members don't realize the job that they do, answering that phone and getting that information to start that 911.
I imagine there's training involved in a dispatcher job, but they also have some sort of inherent ability to stay calm in a crisis and handle those details well.
They do. I mean, the professionalism that they exhibit, and if you think about it, many of these folks, the vast majority of them, they don't have a law enforcement background to begin with, so they kind of come in from 0 to 60. They go through a really intensive training program, a simulation program, just to see if they're going to fit in this line of work. But you're right, to take that call with all that emotion over the phone and then try to calm them down, get the facts as much as you can, and then immediately kick that out to have an officer en route, even while you still may be on the phone. That takes an extraordinary person, and we're grateful for them because they are part of that total system, that emergency response system.
Right. Well, and today, this week, is National Law Enforcement Memorial Week. National Telecommunicator Week was the second week of April.
Okay.
This past week was National Correctional Officer Week here in the United States, of which I have 81 corrections deputies that day in, day out manage our county jail here in Calhoun County for the citizens. And we recognized our corrections deputy of the year last week, which was Deputy Ted Warden. And this week we recognize our law enforcement deputy of the week, which is Deputy Dave Hominga.
All right, and there'll be an officer as well who is acknowledged similarly.
That's right. Our officer of the year is Officer Damon Young. He's one of 12. Every month we select an officer of the month, and then the finalist we ultimately choose who is the one that just stood out among the 12. And this year it's Officer Damon Young. He's assigned to our school, Battle Creek Central, and I just think the level of patience and the work that he does up there, the mentoring he does with the young people up there is just phenomenal. And he just represents the very best of what we have to offer, and this year we get to acknowledge that.
Well, and congratulations to all of them. We'll come back in just a moment on 95.3 WBCK with Chief Jim Blocker and Sheriff Matt Saxton on a Monday. A few more minutes with Chief Jim Blocker and Sheriff Matt Saxton. We were talking about dispatch there for a second, and it got me to thinking about Kalamazoo County still struggling with the notion of a centralized dispatch. Having come here 20 years ago and worked 14 years in Kalamazoo, they've been talking about that for 20 years and haven't been able to pull that off. This is something both of you advocate, the notion of a centralized dispatch where all of your dispatchers are working in one location and they can communicate with each other easily if needed.
Well, we moved to a central dispatch back in 2008, 9. So we've been fortunate to have all 911 calls in Calhoun County go to one room here in Calhoun County with centralized dispatch We closed up 3 separate PSAPs at the time and converted them all into one. And, it's gone through growing pains, but I think that's the best thing we did here in Calhoun County was to combine those 3 PSAPs. It's saving every entity throughout Calhoun County money.
It's a pretty significant endorsement there. You see it that way too, Chief?
We do, and the sheriff is exactly right. Everybody that's participating in it now has seen their bills go down, just their costs go down, and that's just the opposite of what we were seeing in 2006, 2007 when we were talking about this. The other thing it points out is that, unlike other counties, maybe in the surrounding area, Calhoun County is unique in that we usually will find ways to work together and collaboratively. Because we know not all of us, we're not that big. We don't have a lot of resources. We don't have private, islands of control. And I think that is what's special is the fact that we can get together and we can get things figured out collectively. And I think that's something Calhoun County should be proud of.
Next thing we're figuring out is a new police headquarters.
That's right. Another good example of something that we all should be proud of, right?
Yeah, so where do we stand with that? The ground has been broken, if I recall?
Not yet. So this week, you're going to a lot more activity. Fencing is going to go up, and heavy equipment will start to come in. And the plans, the parking plans, and the congestion and the frustration, all of that is have been communicated thoroughly and will be continually communicated thoroughly throughout the entire process. We do anticipate groundbreaking to be on June 1, 10 in the morning in the area. And it's something that we've been working on for just about 30 months now. And the fact that we're finally here is really exciting.
So lots of talk about what a modern police headquarters facility needs, I presume, and you've tried to work all that in.
Well, not only what we need, but also what does the future going to require? Because that was one of the fundamental challenges of the current facility is when it was built and designed, there were no labs. There was not computer and computer-based crimes and the internet, and all of this infrastructure had to be added. And what we found is we quickly outgrew a building for 60, and not to mention that force itself had grown considerably.
And Sheriff, you've already been through this, so you know how that goes.
Yeah, we're 18 months, 2 years into a new building, and we're so thankful for that opportunity. We have a shared center with the state police, city of Marshall, and us, so the process, I know what Chief Blocker's talking about when he says they've been at the process for 30 months and now they're excited to see those shovels go into the ground here on June 1st.
And talk about a shared center and central dispatch, and it really is pretty slick how that's set up with all the different entities that can walk from one set of offices to another and just communicate with each other.
As Chief Blocker mentioned, the collaboration between municipalities and entities here in Calhoun County is we're looked at by other areas in the state for that collaboration that we do locally here.
Okay. National Police Memorial Week is this week, and special observances tomorrow as officers are recognized. And the public can come to that, right?
Yes, they can.
And when is that?
Noon tomorrow, City Hall.
Okay.
And if you happen to get to D.C., take an opportunity to visit the National Law Enforcement Memorial. There's over 21,000 names on that wall, dating back to the late 1700s. The thing, even on this list of new names going on today, we are still losing law enforcement personnel that responded to the incidents of 9/11, either at the Pentagon or in New York City, to illnesses, specifically cancer, caused by the hours of time they spent looking for survivors of that incident. So even today, 16 years, 17 years later, we're still losing officers that went into that dangerous situation.
And losing them as a direct result of that, even now.
That's right. Well, and again, we lost Detective Laverne Brand in May of 2005, and again, his name is inscribed there as well. So there is reason to go, to take a look, and for those who remembered him and his contributions. I mean, the legacy of Laverne. It's felt by many already, still in our building. He cast a pretty wide shadow, even when he was among us, and now in death, he still continues to do so.
Well, we thank you for being with us today, as always, and shedding light on this, and extend our thanks to your forces as well.
Thank you, Richard.
All right. Talk to you again soon. Chief Jim Blocker, Sheriff Matt Saxton.